We're back with more NBA coverage, and in this one I'll be covering the Game 7 match in the conference semis between the Thunder and Nuggets. So to get things started out, obviously coming into this game, the Nuggets honestly had a real chance of winning. I thought they could have at least. I mean, just the general experience and the fact that they were able to storm back in Game 6 in overtime and secure themselves a chance to get it in 7 was honestly enough for me at that point to consider them the victors. I mean, we're talking about a team who had consistently made Game 7 appearances, whether or not they came out on top, and had an inordinate amount of playoff experience compared to this iteration of the Thunder. I mean, there was a graphic and they stated that, like, Hartenstein, for example, had been in a Game 7 before. Alex Caruso, interestingly enough, although he has playoff experience and was obviously a champion in 2020, he never even made a Game 7 appearance in his NBA career. And then when talking about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, his only experience in said game was in the 2020 first round series against the Rockets, as weird as that bubble year was. And to be honest, he played fine. It came down to the wire, and they ended up losing that game. And that's been it for him. Nobody else on this team had any playoff experience entering this, let alone Game 7 experience with your backs against the wall. They were certainly going to have to lean into their home court advantage, obviously, being at home for this game. And they needed to make defense their calling card. Because, to be honest, starting out this game, their offense just continued to falter when it came to jump shooting. They could not find their rhythm from outside at all. And in the same way, the Nuggets weren't honestly killing them from 3 either. But they were just able to impose their will on offense. I mean, instantly, you had Christian Braun come out with multiple good looks in the paint, then gets a ball on the assist from Jokic, I guess. Just sprints back out to the three-point line, sets up and cashes one in over Cason Wallace, and then gets himself another bucket for 9 quick first-quarter points. And the Nuggets offense just seemed to be clicking overall. I mean, they were generally moving a ball around in an excellent fashion, but Jokic was also just making some clean passes. Had a few more no-lookers and just wild assists in there. And ultimately, this would allow the Nuggets to go on a 15-8 run to open things up. Naturally, the Thunder would adjust and start to hone in on focusing on Christian Braun. But safe to say that the Thunder were turning things around a little bit. Yes, they were still not necessarily doing the best from 3. They started hitting them, though. And what kept them in this game the most, especially when you look into this 33-15 run that they had, initially, it came down to how they were attacking them on the offensive end in the very early portion. Because while the three-pointer wasn't working, they had a few things that they could exploit. For one, Aaron Gordon actually did decide to play in this game, but knowing that he still had a left hamstring strain, he was obviously not going to be as mobile or as athletic as he usually could be. Now, that didn't make him devoid of effort, because he would get out there and put his body on the line for rebounds and things like that, even getting an and-one in an earlier portion of this game. But on defense, if the Thunder attacked him in the right way, that could make him a liability. And on a good number of occasions throughout the rest of this game, you can say, he got caught out of position numerous times because I guess they were in a zone. He was watching the corner nearest to him, whether it was on the right or left side of the court, and they just had open shooters waiting for him to make the slightest of movements. He obviously wouldn't be able to recover in time because he just wasn't going to be as quick on his feet, and they were able to get some threes that way. Also, with Aaron Gordon getting out of position in those occasions, sometimes, he was able to recover, but, with a sort of hesitancy, I guess, on parts of the other players out there, they started to shift over their zone. And namely, Nikola Jokic was watching the middle of the paint. He had to try and shift focus on numerous occasions, and that opened so many easy cuts on the back door for the Thunder. Whether it was Chet Holmgren sneaking behind for a few alley-oop dunks earlier on, or whether it was Isaiah Hartenstein just getting back there on layups, on dunks, on putbacks, that started to eat away at the Nuggets as well. And all of a sudden, after being off to a sluggish start, the Thunder were right back in it. Although the Nuggets were continuing to hit a few shots every now and then. But at essentially the tail end of the second quarter, with around 3 minutes and 11 seconds left, this is where everything changed completely. Because this 33-15 run would eventually become parlayed into another set of runs that would make this stretch of 55-30 run spanning up until the fourth quarter. And it just came in a flurry. Like, I kid you not, Jalen Williams just went absolutely ballistic in the second quarter, and especially in these last 2 minutes and 18 seconds. Because, quite frankly, even if they weren't necessarily doing the greatest in terms of set offense and jump shooting, what really opened the floodgates outside of them getting easy paint points on cuts was the full brevity of their defensive play. They just got successive stop after successive stop, no matter what. They were hounding Jamal Murray. They were flying after offensive rebounds and defensive rebounds, getting out in transition and running the floor. Because at that point, for a number of reasons, the Nuggets were not able to match their speed in the transition offense. So every single time, they were just getting dunks from Jalen Williams. They were getting right in Nikola Jokic's grill, mostly Alex Caruso, which is interesting to say the least. I mean, obviously Jokic has a commanding size advantage over him. And again, throughout the series, they have been throwing numerous bodies at him. But Holmgren, after that and one that Jokic got on him, I guess Caruso just took it upon himself to take that matchup, and that seemed to make all the difference instantly. Even though Jokic should still get his in a way, whether it was Alex Caruso, whether it was Jalen Williams, whether it was Cason Wallace, as soon as he was backing down in some of these cases, no matter who was guarding him, there was always a person just waiting to pounce on at the right moment. And all of a sudden, with good, steady play from Shai Gilgeous-Alexander too, who was having himself a pretty solid game as well, all of a sudden, the Thunder are now up by 14 with a 60-46 score after Jalen Williams had a 17-point second quarter. Shit was tremendous. He did not perform well throughout most of this series. And yet, what did he do? Despite being as young of a player as he is, he took it on the chin. He let the world know that he was going to respond and be much better, and he came out of the gates playing much better. And also, again, when I look at these turnovers, you know what I'm saying? Apparently, there was a situation where Jokic just wasn't willing to like change the approach or something like that. And to an extent, I do get it. You know what I'm saying? Because again, now you had a situation where outside of Christian Braun, other players just were not hitting their shots. I mean, Jamal Murray was relatively inefficient. Aaron Gordon was trying, but obviously he's hindered. And Michael Porter Jr., I guess even he was still hindered, but even then, he hadn't been doing a whole bunch for you this series. So to consistently depend on that would have been interesting, but at the same time, the Thunder, to this point, had played a total of 10 matches against them. And by this point, every single time they see Jokic backing down in the paint, they know what's coming. You have to try to switch it up in some way at that point. And I guess they just chose not to. In the third quarter, would honestly just see this go from bad to worse. Like, I kid you not. Out of the floodgates, man. Out of the fucking floodgates. The Nuggets get the ball back, and Jamal Murray literally runs into Nikola Jokic's screen, leading to the easiest two-point attempt Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is probably going to have for the remainder of this playoffs. He doesn't even get a whole lot of lift on this dunk. He just jumps up with ease and just tips it in. Like, it was not difficult for the Thunder out there at all once they were able to settle in. Again, aided by their defense and their ability to create the open three-pointer. They settled a tremendous amount of times in the last games, or the previous games, for just like taking up three-pointers on set shots. And clearly that wasn't working a whole bunch. They were able to improve on that a little bit in this game. Also, you had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander even get into creating his own three-point shot, which he ended up hitting a certain point of time. Like, the Nuggets would have just a few buckets, but again, even if you were able to have these responses, the fact that they just continue to get inconsistent production from their guys, and that they just continue, like the amount of turnovers that they acquired was just astronomically bad. Like, at a point, I think the margin was like 20-5 in total turnovers for both squads. Also, keep in mind, too, that all of these runs were taking a toll on their clock management. Now, I understand that David Adelman is a first-time head coach, man, and, you know, obviously you were going to be put at a disadvantage by letting go of Michael Malone before this playoff run in the first place. But at the same time, dude, you have to... It was just a weird balance of how you utilize them. I mean, I do understand it to an extent that, bro, if you're going to give up that many large runs to one team in a game, you're trying to stop the bleeding as best as you can. Like, you can't let that just parlay into something completely insurmountable, which ended up happening anyway, just because they were playing that poor. At the same time, you've got to try to have some semblance of trust in your guys. And when one of those two things aren't in play, certainly you're going to see a coach just abuse their timeouts left and right. And that's essentially what ended up happening, which put this game on ice completely. Because the Nuggets, if they wanted to counter potentially using that last timeout, they were down to just one with a bunch of time left in the game. So if you wanted to counter that, you had to get a run. And they could not muster one to save their lives at all. The points just kept coming. Like, you even had Aaron Wiggins get in and get buckets for you. Even in the third quarter, Cason Wallace gets a fast break opportunity and throws it down on Nikola Jokic. Is this your MVP? Getting posterized in transition by a person who, on all accounts, is pretty much a role player. That's not to be disrespectful to Cason Wallace, though. He's damn good in his role. And, bruh, honestly, with the Thunder being able to pull off what they did, throughout the series, he was one of their most important players. I'll tell you that right now. But at that point, you knew it was over. And the fact that that last timeout was wasted with 9 minutes and 36 seconds left to go in the game, it was over. Because immediately after that, you had no choice but to get your starting lineup out of there. In came the role players, and that was really it for this game, with the Thunder winning it in a commanding 125-93 score. Just straight up. I'll just get to the numbers and then I'll get into a few insights for both teams. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander had an incredible game for his standard. And, I guess people have been complaining about not necessarily seeing that marquee game from him just yet. Well, you got it here, because in 36 minutes, he had 35 points, 3 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 steals, and a block on 12 of 19 shooting with 3 threes, and all without a single turnover as well. Jalen Williams had a great response. 24 points, 7 assists, and 5 rebounds on 10 of 17 shooting with 2 threes in his first ever Game 7. Chet Holmgren had 13 and 11, and Hardenstein had 10 and 7. Caruso off the bench had 11, and Aaron Wiggins had 8 points as well. Also, as a team, they picked up 16 steals. Like, a lot of these turnovers were on the ball. It's not necessarily like there were a few that were just terrible passes, and there was one earlier where Aaron Gordon just got, his chair pulled in the backcourt, and Lucius Dort was able to capitalize off of that. But in truth, this was on-ball aggression, full on-ball aggression from that defensive unit. They were just getting up on these ball handlers, sometimes multiple people at a time, just swarming them. And the Nuggets couldn't do anything about it. As for the Nuggets, though, Jokic did as much as he could do. 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 7 assists. Now, granted, you would like to see more than 9 shots from him. But at the same time, you're trying to get your teammates involved, and with them shooting as poorly as they did, it's just very hard to, give him all the flack here. Certainly, there is some criticism warranted to be directed his way, but at the same time, outside of Christian Braun, again, nobody else did much of anything. Braun had 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists with a steal on 7 of 14 shooting. I'm looking at a player in Jamal Murray that had 13 points. Aaron Gordon, again, 8 points, 11 rebounds. He's doing what he could do, given his injury. But at the same time, you would just like more. And I don't really know how much that was truly possible for him. As for Michael Porter Jr., man, even if he was dealing with something, I'm going to tell you something right now. I don't know about him, man. 6 points on 3 of 8 shooting. Let me tell you something right now, because I guess I would just get into one of my insights here. Man, the Nuggets, simply put, are going to have a lot of questions to ask themselves in the offseason when it comes to the, structure of this core right now. And I think that they start with Michael Porter Jr. I think that they do. Like, even if he was hurt, man, there are just plays that I just truly don't understand when it comes to watching him play. Like, literally, I see one play where there's a loose ball and he's in the vicinity of it. And as other OKC defenders are swarming towards the ball, he's just running very slowly towards it. He's not even making an effort to get on the ball. Now, it's one thing to struggle with shooting because of a shoulder injury, but at the same time, if I'm Michael Porter Jr., I'm getting my other shoulder down there. I'm diving towards the ball, and I'm trying to secure an extra possession. It's as simple as that. I'm not going to question his effort, but it's like, damn. Like, where is the sense of urgency at the same time? Like, this is game 7. This is your season on the line. And you don't go for the ball in that situation. I found that very interesting. But even more so, when we look at these damn playoff series, man, it's like every single year, it's the same song and dance with this man. It's the same song and dance with this man every single time. And I don't understand it. It's like, literally, he just folded in Game 7 against Minnesota last year. And that was just the icing on the cake of what was a poor series from him. Even with him being way healthier. Then we get into this game, or in this series, and you have that kind of performance while on the series having just 7.4 points per game and 5.3 rebounds per game on average, with just 32.2% shooting from deep and 25% shooting from 3. Even if you are in that position, the fact of the matter is that they are forking over one of the more, expensive contracts on the roster for you to be their shooter. And you have that poor performance from outside. That's unacceptable. And given how inconsistent he can be, whether it is a combination of his play when he is healthy and a matter of overall availability over the course of this entire contract even, because he's had numerous problems that have taken him out for extended periods of time in just the duration of this contract. We're not even talking about all the years prior. So the Nuggets are going to have to ask themselves if he is a player worth committing to for a longer period of time. Because when you look at it, he is 26 going on 27. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, he would be nearing his prime. But you have to ask yourselves if this is the best you're going to get from him. And if it is, it will certainly not help them contend. So they're going to have to grapple with that. Also, some of these other younger guys are going to have to be moved on from. I would assume that you're keeping Peyton Watson because he provides great defense off the bench. I was watching an offseason video talking about how the Nuggets would have to approach things as well. There was a mention that Christian Braun is up for a contract extension, a rookie contract extension, which he will probably get. He will probably get that, and I wouldn't, be mad at that totally. but it's a matter of just figuring out the money. Braun does deserve it, though. We're talking about a person who saw a massive jump in production this season alone, already came in as a solid playoff contributor for the Nuggets over the course of the last couple years prior to this season. He's already an NBA champion, so I don't see them moving on from him. Julian Strawther, also, you just got him. And while his Game 7 performance wasn't necessarily anything to write home about, at least he gave you some flashes, and that's really all you can ask for. Also, you just spent a you just spent a draft pick on him. So it's like, it wouldn't make sense to move on from him this early. Zeke Naji has to go. It's time. It has been past time. The fact that they signed that man to the contract that they did single-handedly prevented them from retaining the services of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Now, honestly, with the way that KCP has been playing to this point, maybe it's not necessarily the worst thing in the world. But at the same time, you know, when looking at it in hindsight, it's like you're just coming off of an NBA championship in which his two-way presence, his 3-and-D ability, spurred them to victory in that series alongside Bruce Brown Jr., who also could not be retained by this team. Maybe you were going to lose Bruce Brown Jr. anyways, but the goal was to retain his services. And you just let Caldwell-Pope go just like that because you wanted to invest in a player in Zeke Naji that literally does not do shit for this team. I kid you not. He's not going to flourish into anything truly important for this team. I mean, he played 57 games last year. He started in just 4 of them. He averages just 3.2 points per game, which is right on par with what he did in the previous season, while not even starting a single game. He's not really all that good. Like, you can be fooled by the efficiency here, but he really does not do anything. He is a quintessential, just end of the rotation player. And to waste that much money on him, it's continuing to hurt you now. You have to move on from him. Russell Westbrook as well. I saw something that stated that he was a minus 84 in this series when he was on the court. And again, even in the game, it's like the decision making just continues to confuse me. It continues to. And we're talking about a player in Russell Westbrook. Yes, you know, he's always been a player who has had tunnel vision. And when he was at his peak, it made for legendary moments. I get that. At the same time, we are talking about a player in Russell Westbrook who has accrued a massive amount of playoff experience and consistently just crumbles in these moments. What he was doing in the regular season with Jokic, people were finally starting to come around and think that maybe things could change. Maybe he was a player going through a full evolution. Maybe he could finally get himself an NBA championship. It was all going to come down to his play style. Think about this. He is 36 years old, will be 37 at essentially the start of next season. Now, maybe with him being way past his prime and just retaining this mindset that he's always had, it might be difficult to expect him to change his ways on the basketball court. And that's fair. At the same time, that kind of shit is what seems to separate him from some of the other greats in just this generation of the NBA. We talk about guys like Steph. We talk about guys like LeBron. We talk about guys like Kevin Durant. We talk about guys like Kyrie Irving, even in some capacity, in one way or another. All of those guys, all of them, have undergone massive shifts in a certain element of their play on the court, in some aspect. You know, Curry has definitely, as he's gotten older, he's always had it. But even more so now, with the kind of pressure that they will put on him at the three-point line, he's gotten into attacking the paint. LeBron, with him getting older and obviously accruing a massive amount of wear and tear over the course of his entire career, obviously also losing a little bit of athleticism and leaping ability. He can still get up for the alley-oops and he can still dunk it over people. He can still barrel down into the paint, but obviously that's going to be taxing. So what has he done? He's developed the three-point shot. Surprisingly enough, over the course of these last few years, he's become one of the better three-point shooters in the NBA, at least off of efficiency. Now, you know, the jury's still out there across all the players in the league on whether or not they truly respect his jumper, but as the production suggests, you kind of have to now with LeBron. And this man is 40 years old. You get into a player like Kevin Durant, his shift in his play style came by force, obviously, with his Achilles injury taking away an entire season from him. Naturally, he's going to have to adjust in some way. And yet, he's gotten even more lethal as a three-level scorer. Now, obviously, he's been a little more willing to facilitate, though again, with his role on the Suns, as terrible as that dynamic of the big three, supposed big three, scratch that is, it's going to be difficult for him to generate those kinds of looks for other players when he's been a guy who has consistently dominated in isolation. Even Kyrie Irving, to an extent, though he's been one of the best isolation players in the NBA over the past generation, and he's already been an NBA champion, yet when he gets alongside Luka Doncic for the last season and a half prior to the trade, he decides to shift into a little bit of a playmaker and off-ball player for the Mavericks, because that's exactly what they needed, and it made them NBA runner-ups. Got them an NBA Finals appearance and everything. Yet Russell Westbrook, knowing that he's older, that he's consistently losing steps as he progresses into that older age, wants to still barrel down into the paint and get shots at the rim, when, ironically enough, even when he was at his prime, he had struggles with touch around the rim, and it is exacerbated now. There were multiple sequences last game where this man just smokes what are essentially routine layups. Now, at that point, the game was already done, but it just adds to the issue. Again, it's not to say that Russell Westbrook isn't a great player, but like, damn, if we're really out here trying to get this man to get an NBA championship, it is going to have to be on his own volition to slightly change around his game. And he refuses to do so in any context. Even though, given, kind of a few of his last statements when he was with the Clippers and the Nuggets, there have been signs of a potential willingness to do so. But even after just a few performances, he's always going to revert back to who he always has been. And it's not going to be the same, even with him having that knowledge. That refusal to adjust to the times and adjust to what the team needs is ultimately going to continue hurting him. So honestly, as much as I wouldn't necessarily want to make a crazy statement like that, because you want to have some hope for him being able to do so. But I'll stamp this right now as I'm recording this. Russell Westbrook will never get an NBA championship. On par with CP3. He will never get an NBA championship because he's not willing to conform to play styles. He is always, even in a reduced role, trying to capture the essence of being the one. And unfortunately, in more ways than one, he is no longer that kind of player. And he has never been truly willing to accept that. No matter what he stated in these press conferences with these teams at all of these destinations. Because at the end of the day, what he does on the basketball court tells us all what we already know about him. This is going to be how he is up until he retires. Ironically enough, I didn't want to say it, but even with James Harden, to an extent, another player who has honestly consistently had playoff struggles and probably won't win an NBA championship either, even he, when the team called for it, decided to change his playing style. In essence, knowing that he's not going to be the same kind of dynamic scorer that he had been in Houston with the Clippers, and especially when Kawhi was out for all that time, he held down the fort, not necessarily by scoring his ass off, but opening up the floodgates for other players to perform. That's why Norman Powell had a dynamic season this year. That's why Zubac, if he's up for a contract extension, is probably going to get one. Because he decided to make a shift in being a facilitator and a primary facilitator, even though he had always been a pretty solid one in Houston. It became a greater part of his game. He leaned into that. And it paid off for them, at least in the regular season. I'll say that. Obviously, to continue suffering first-round exits, that's not the way to go. But it's like, even he changed, and it's not working for him. So why would I think that Russell Westbrook could do it, given all that I've seen from him? I don't know. It's just not a good look for him. Also, during this video that I watched from ESPN NBA insider Bobby Marks on offseason plans for the Nuggets, he did also suggest that the Nuggets should probably make David Adelman the permanent head coach for the team. Again, I don't know. I mean, yes, it's a positive that, honestly, he was able to get into the second round and nearly advance to the conference finals after taking on the best team in the league and putting them on the brink of elimination. That's nothing to scoff at. That's pretty damn impressive for a person who is a first-time head coach. And I guess, given everything that has happened with Michael Malone in that whole debacle, you need some sense of contingency in that organization, because mostly everything else will change as far as this offseason goes. I think there are honestly other more desirable head coaches on the market, but if you are trying to give David Edelman a chance through a full season, not just the final few games, like it's a small sample size, and that could be a positive or negative thing. But in reality, given what he has shown you when it comes to his pros during this time, maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to give him a permanent short-term contract. At the same time, again, I just question his clock management a little bit. Now, granted, the Nuggets' lack of execution on the court did not help that cause in any sense of the imagination. But again, maybe that's something that could be hashed out under a full season of work. As for the Thunder, what a fucking game from them. The entire unit. Whether it was Alex Caruso literally just putting his small frame on the line against a big body in Nikola Jokic and doing all that he did to deny him the basketball. That played heavily into his lack of shots, by the way. They were just trying as best as they could to run him out of the post and deny him the basketball, forcing other players to get it in their hands and trying to operate the offense, which obviously would hurt because Jokic, obviously being pretty much the best passer in the game overall, and the engine of that offense. Even with Jamal Murray being able to facilitate, obviously there's going to be a drop-off, and you will live with that drop-off because it helps you as a defense. So it was very smart on their end to do that. And literally, in more ways than one, they dominated them. I mean, we look at the margin of victory. It's the 7th highest in a Game 7 in NBA history. It's the 2nd highest in a Game 7 for them in their franchise's history. And Shai Gilgeous' performance also gave him the 2nd most points in a Game 7 by a player in that franchise of all time. They came to play. And it was interesting to see because, again, as I was kind of just alluding to before the game, before it even came on, I loosely said that this game was going to show a lot about this Thunder team. And for them to completely take it over after being down like this, with their backs completely against the wall for essentially the very first time in a playoff setting for this iteration of the team. That spoke a tremendous amount of volumes. And it's interesting to think about what could potentially go down in the offseason given that. Because, again, everybody wants to continue clamoring for the fact that they can potentially use some of these assets when it comes to these picks to go out there and get themselves an additional superstar to put them completely over the top. And while that would be very great to bring in another marquee player to Oklahoma City, at the same time, they just prove to you that they don't need an additional superstar because when their backs are against the wall, when they need to secure a series clinching victory, they have all the pieces they need to not only win, but win in commanding, in dominant fashion. Simply put. Also, another thing I really did not know was that Alex Caruso was initially on the Oklahoma City's G League affiliate, and Mark Daigneault at the time was also the G League head coach for that team. Now, 9 years later, they are both in the Western Conference Finals with a chance to potentially win the entire thing if things go according to plan. So that's a really cool story to navigate as well. And like that, the field is definitely set. The Timberwolves are going to be a very interesting opponent for them. In a similar way, they also split the season series as they head into this matchup tonight. It should be very interesting to see how the Thunder especially will guard Anthony Edwards. I would have to assume that in the same way they threw multiple bodies at Jokic, they're going to throw multiple bodies at Anthony Edwards, and they have the depth to do so. I mean, whether it's Alex Caruso, whether it's Casey Wallace, whether it's Aaron Wiggins, whether it's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they're going to do all they can to not necessarily stop Anthony Edwards. I don't think you're necessarily going to do that. You're going to want to slow him down and make him a playmaker, which is also why Anthony Edwards should be a player of focus. I mean, he'll naturally be a player of focus, but you know what's coming. Are you going to continue to be willing to rise to the occasion, take that on, and lean into an overarching takeover in this series rather than allow the Thunder to win out simply because they're running you off of the three-point line? No. Take that on. Get just as physical with them like he has consistently been throughout these few playoff runs that he's had. I would have to imagine as well. The way they will account for each other on the three-point line is also going to be interesting. Because, again, they are, I guess the Thunder are a little deeper. But, when it comes to shooting, obviously it's not their calling card, but they do have some marquee shooters on their roster. And so do the Timberwolves. How will they guard each other on that front? They're going to consistently run zone. They're going to try to mix it up with an exotic look. We're definitely going to find out later on tonight, but it should be an interesting series for sure. As for coverage of it, it was stated yesterday that ESPN will be looking for Michael Malone's services in this one. How ironic is that? They could have literally been in this position again. I don't know what the Nuggets brass were thinking about, to be honest. Even if Michael Malone did suffer a Game 7 loss last year, I'm sure you would have loved to have an experienced head coach in this situation. Because, let's be honest, if it was true that Jokic actually just denied talking to David Adelman about switching up the offense and shit like that, Michael Malone would definitely not take that shit. I'm going to tell you that right now. Even if the situation was, they seem to lose respect for Michael Malone prior to his firing, I'll tell you right now, in a situation like this, he would have damn sure commanded it because he knows what the hell he's talking about. And that's really the point of that hire. I mean, I think it's a smart move by ESPN to go out and get a free agent head coach. And honestly, they had a good number of coaches to choose from. You could have gone with Michael Malone. You could have gone with Mike Brown. You could have gone with Taylor Jenkins if you wanted to. But obviously, Michael Malone, having the overall experience that he does in the league and being a championship winning head coach, obviously, He's going to be able to provide you with a lot of insight that most others simply can't. And also, again, with him being in free agency, he's not bound to any entity whatsoever. He's certainly looking for a job, and I think that he will get one pretty much as the moratorium kicks in for this upcoming free agency period. He will find a job during then, in literally the first few hours of that opening up. I'm going to make that statement right now. He is not going to be jobless past July, early July. He will not. He will find some vacancy for some team out there. He's too good of a head coach to not get hired. But yeah, typically what some of these networks have done in the past is they'll just get like a player who's bound to a team or a free agent player who has connections to multiple teams. Like, I kid you not, last year they had Joel Embiid and Paul George for coverage, and they literally get themselves into a situation where Paul George and Joel Embiid are just fucking dry tampering the whole time. And you don't want a situation like that again, because that could have severely hurt not just them, but the 76ers franchise as well. Obviously, they would end up getting him regardless, and they promptly were one of the worst teams in the NBA. So I guess that was their punishment. But you do not want to get yourself in that kind of trouble. So to just go for a head coach in this position who isn't necessarily connected to anyone, you could avoid that easily. But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.